Good morning, good morning, good morning. All right. I'd like to call to order the October MTA Board Meeting. I think we've already established at this moment we do not have a quorum, so but we weren't going to be voting on anything in the immediate term. So let's wait and make sure we have that. Safety announcement.
Your safety is of the foremost importance to the MTA. Therefore, we ask that you listen and adhere to the following instructions. If you witness an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room and call 911 immediately. Please follow any audible instructions provided through the public address system or visually on screens in the event of an emergency. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway or stairwell B down the hallway past the elevators. If you have a mobility disability or cannot self-evacuate, please proceed to stairwell D or E for assistance by MTA staff or emergency personnel. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. If you need assistance during an evacuation, please tell an MTA staff member or emergency personnel. Thank you and have a safe day.
Chair Lieber, we now have a quorum.
Okay. Thank you. Lucille Songai, could you moderate the public speakers portion?
Absolutely. Good morning, Chair Lieber and board members. We have 24 registered speakers here today. For all speakers, we ask that you please keep your remarks to 2 minutes in the interest of time and fairness to all public speakers. Our first speaker today is Christopher Greif, followed by Yolanda Allen. Okay, so we're going to start with our first speaker, Yolanda Allen, and come back to Chris Greif.
Good morning. Unfortunately for me, on Monday, I forgot to schedule my stressor ride 24 hours or the 48 hours, so I decided to use the new enhanced e-hail. It cost me $25.68 to get from my home to down here, while a weekly with a Metro card unlimited is $34. A monthly is $132, and if I took a weekly with Long Island Railroad, it's $102. Here it is, I already paid a quarter of what these people need. Most people on stressor ride are all mostly on disability and seniors that are on fixed income. How do you find the equity in the amount of money that they have to pay on if they use e-hail? Is that fair to all of us that try to use the system? No, it's not. None of you guys would have to shell that money out their pocket if they have to do it on a weekly basis. Some of us go to doctors, some of us go to physical therapy. We have all these things, and if you forget, it's costing you money that you don't have that discretionary income at all. This is mostly ridiculous. We need to stop and get things right. Be fair to the rest of us that use stressor ride. This is unfair. It's unjust. This like Robin Hood. You know, we get robbed. This is ridiculous. And I am very stressed and upset because still I got injured on this system on 8 August 31st, and still nobody has tried to help me or gave me any assistance in my injury, and I'm still suffering. I can barely walk. Before I could walk better, now I'm suffering. What are you going to do for people that use stressor ride? It's about time. Every year, month after month, people come and complain, and they still
Thank
haven't
you
done
for your
anything.
comment.
Enough is enough.
Our next speaker is Monique Johnson, followed by Jean Ryan.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm here to talk about the accessoride and the transit. Accessoride. I had called them one time, and because the car said he came, I couldn't get a car that day, so I couldn't make my appointment. But they was worrying about, do I want a return trip? How can I have a return trip if I never got to my destination? And I'm also asking, can you change the accessoride? Because sometimes we have emergency, or put some time, like for a year, that if you have emergency, that you could be able to call that day and still be able to get accessoride. About the transit, y'all want to keep us safe. I was also an allied worker before I came disabled. Y'all put a bunch of us in there with no type of protection, no police protection. If they coming after y'all, what do you think they're gonna do to an ally worker that has nothing? But thank God y'all removed them from there, because I would have not took that job as me being an ally worker. As far as transit, y'all said y'all fixed the one on Hoyt Street. I live downtown Brooklyn. I went to the one on Hoyt Street. The elevator was broken. I took my chance and went down to J Street. The elevator had just stopped working. I walked even a little further down to the Aura train. No elevator. People had to help me down the step because I had to make sure I get to that appointment, because I can't afford to have my health decrease any longer. So I'm asking you, can you please make an app to either check and make sure, even if that's the first day of that person's trip, they should be able to get a ride to their destination, because you're messing with our health and our mental ability.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jean Ryan, followed by Jesse Figueroa.
Hi, I'm Jean Ryan, President of Disabled in Action of Metropolitan New York, DIA for short. On October 1st, 2023, I again had to be taken off the express bus by the New York City Fire Department because the driver had never been trained on the express bus, and the New York City road crew never came. This was the second time my 400-pound wheelchair and I had to be taken off the bus by the FDNY in just 6 months. And I had maybe ridden the bus 7 times in that interval. That's not a good rate. Why is NYCT not training their drivers? Many years ago, and even now, some people are blaming it on the union. I have never heard of a union that is not for human and civil rights. I am blaming it on the MTA, who is not training all drivers to use the express bus. Sure, many drivers will not drive an express bus, but some will because they are filling in for others, so all have to know how to drive an express bus and use the lift. When I get an untrained driver, it takes 20 minutes to get me on the bus instead of 4 minutes, and I have to do the teaching. All the riders, not just me, are horribly inconvenienced. My ordeal a few weeks ago lasted 2.5 hours for what should have taken 38 minutes. Years ago, when I had this same problem, the MTA promised to train all drivers on the express bus lift at the bus training center at Zarega. What happened to that promise?
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jesse Figueroa, followed by Christopher Greif.
Morning. Can y'all hear me well? Hi. Long time no see. The only thing I'm going to bring up right here this morning, I encountered two teenagers who cut school. They were smoking on the R train at 95th Street and 4th Avenue in Bay Ridge. I had to kind of escort them out the subway with the help of a conductress at 36th Street. So they were looking suspicious, so that's the only thing I wanted to bring up. So please, and there's also problems with the detouring of when the 5th Avenue was repaved. There was no signage posted on the B63 bus route and all that, and people were like going and panicking, like they needed to go somewhere. But and other things, there's still assaults going on the buses that I've seen once, and near accident, I was on a B63 bus because you got drivers who are not cautious when they're driving around, especially 5th Avenue and 3rd Avenue in Brooklyn. That's all I wanted to bring up, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Christopher Greif, followed by John Padula.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Christopher D. Greif. Hope everyone's doing well. Sorry I wasn't here for a second, but Judy calls. One thing I want to say is, as an advocate for people with disability for over 30 years, first of all, I want to thank Accessorite because thank God we have Delaney cards to tell us how to sign up. It would also be good, an idea, MTA board members, to please, let's work together to get these cards to add in also for how people can sign up to do complaints and keep the logs in. Because not everyone can use a computer. Not everyone can get on how to use it on the phone because it's not easy. But an option needs to come in. If we can do options for Omni, we should could do options just like this Delaney card, which is really great because I like it. I can track the Accessorite as well for my mother or my cousin if I have to. But showing people how to do the complaints or put compliments, say like I want to compliment the driver, the conductor. And as someone is mentioning that I'm maybe overreacting, no, I'm not, because it's something to help people with every type of disability in our community. Because try to call, it's not easy sometimes because, you know, they're dealing with a lot of calls. So as a person with a disability, and maybe some people realize I do have hidden disability, and I do take this really great to see a card, a Delaney card, but something to say how to put in the MTA compliments, requests, something like this should also be a Delaney card so we can all of us as advocates can advocate to let people know how to do this. So I wanted to, please, we can try to do that. And MTA board members, please help us out with this because this will be a great way to keep more advertisement and another way of outreaching. Thank you.
Our next speaker is John Padula, followed by Charlton D'Souza.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Padula from New York City Public Schools, also a member of the Advisory Committee for Transit Accessibility. And I really want to emphasize, I am here from New York City Public Schools. I know it may seem like the John Padula show sometimes, and sometimes all of us, I think disability is personal, and you try to be balanced, but there are personal issues that impact you every day, and it's hard sometimes to separate that. So I think we just have to understand that. But I'm here for my kids. My department, Educational Vision Services, you're welcome to look us up. 750 plus blind and low vision students throughout the city that we are responsible for their services. My administration, my colleagues, and my teachers, 90 teachers, working with over 750 kids throughout the city. So I just want to be clear, my director, my deputy superintendent support this work. It's outreach, it's to other agencies and organizations, it's transition support for our kids. There's a lot of accessoride vehicles that are picking up and dropping off kids across our city every day. So I just want to be clear, it's not personal, gentlemen. And on that note, leadership is not meant for the faint of heart. You got to have thick skin. And that's why, Jano, Rich, you guys are gentlemen to me. No matter what, you always come up to me, you always shake my hand. It's all good in the heat of battle, right? Don't take things personal. There was a situation last night, and an announcement went out late after 5 p.m. Accessoride users don't have access. Chris P., what does Chris P. do? Cleans up the mess. That's what a leader does. Action first, take care of the situation, fly the plane. All right? You navigate before you communicate. Chris cleaned up the mess. Chris, you're a gentleman. The three of you are gentlemen. That's leadership at its heart. Thank you. I know money's an issue. There are a lot of issues with limited resources. I get it, but we're here to work together, and I appreciate just genuine people just being good and kind.
Our next speaker is Charlton D'Souza, followed by Jessica Murray.
Good morning, everyone. Charlton D'Souza, President of Passengers United. So what I want to know is the SOS teams in the subway to help the homeless was announced about a year ago. Where are they? We're not seeing them in the subway system. And please don't tell me that, and you guys at the MT always say that you have, clinician workers at the end of line stations. Well, guess what the EDPs and homeless are doing now? They figured out that they're going to be harassed at the end of stations. So they're getting off trains at the station before and coming back on another train to go back down. So you're not solving the problem. And the R line, R is in Romeo, F is in fish, E is in egg, one train, there are homeless individuals sleeping on the trains. There's a condition that's been going on at 28th Street now for the last year. People are shooting up needles. There's open drug markets going on. So what the MT needs to do, common sense, you need to start closing all these long passageways, like 34th Street. Any entrance where you have, a long walkway or a gate, close it at 10 p.m. And I think by the MT just doing that, it'll make the police officer's job easy. But I feel too much is being put on the police. And all the cops can do is ask an EDP or homeless individual, do you want to go to a shelter? If they say no, they can't do anything. So this is why you need clinicians with the police visiting all these stations and, helping them. And the situation's only going to get worse now because the migrants are being kicked out of these shelters as well. So again, I asked the MT, what is the plan? What are you going to do, Mayor Eric Adams, Governor Kathy Hochul? We need help in the subway.
Thank you for your comment.
11 people.
Our next speaker is Jessica Murray, followed by Vincent Padula.
Hi, good morning, board. I'm here to talk again about elevator maintenance and ask that you settle this lawsuit. To put the goal of 96.1% uptime in perspective, that means that an elevator can be out of service for more than an entire day every single month. Averages don't really tell the whole story, but they hide a lot. I took a look at the open data on elevator availability with data for the last 12 months. Of 352 elevators, 251, that's 71% of all elevators, had at least 1 month with availability less than 96%, including 14 elevators which had at least 1 month when they were available less than half of the time. 6 elevators had no availability data at all, and 3 were available 100% of the time, every single day for 12 months, not even for maintenance, apparently. Unbelievable, right? I also have a request. When speakers tell you about accessibility barriers they encounter over and over again, please respond by telling us what you're going to do to address the problems. Don't tell us about what you're doing right, what else you're doing right. We're all well aware of the historic investments in subway accessibility that this agency is making. That didn't come from your goodwill, and it's not your money. So please just stop trying to divert attention from the problems. And by the way, this investment in accessibility is actually more than all previous capital plans combined, not just the last 3. Just wanted to point that out. Also, every few months, someone asks me about how elevator outages make it into the alert system because they've encountered a broken elevator that's not on the outages page. According to an MTA OIG report from 2011, a central control desk updates the outages page after confirmation with the station agent that an outage has been reported by LiftNet and that it's not a false positive. So all these values are already inflated. Bad data in, bad data out. We don't believe your numbers. Please do better on maintenance and please settle the lawsuit. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Vincent Padula, followed by Kathleen Collins.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, members of the board. And I just want to say I also work for Educational Vision Services, and I'm here in the capacity of the United Federation of Teachers, which is right down Broadway. And unions stand for equity and inclusion and fair wages, and we're here to come collectively as a disabled community. And I ask the board, I ask everybody in this room, I think everyone would agree with me, do you care about us, New Yorkers, the disabled community? Because I'm here to tell you, and I'm trying to be positive. So as a union person, I'm trying to be positive. I'm trying to say we're in phase 2. And I entitled this The New Game. So the new game is that, yes, finally, things like Uber do work. We can get rides. But now, at whose cost? At my cost. I just looked at my credit card where I run my rides. It's $2,300. It took me $56 to get here this morning because of the last night's last-minute change in plans. Now, I have a family, but besides being a chapter leader and a teacher, I have a family of 5 children, and my wife is asking me, why is your credit card going through the roof? I said, because I have to fund this. So is a phase 3 going to be more equitable? Now, Friday night, I took a classic Access-A-Ride, and Chris said this to me, rely on the Access-A-Rides when you have stability, and then use the on-demand when it's spontaneous. Now, I took a vehicle, he left me across the street, didn't want to help me, put me in danger. The on-demand program can work. Let's talk about a phase 3. Now, reimbursement. Why is there still a fight with the 20-minute window? And then there was another game that happened where, because I called from another number, I give Donna Fredrickson credit. She said, oh, we thought it didn't match up because you used a different number. Now, why are we playing these games? So not only is the Access-A-Ride service broken, I'm forced to use more cabs and I have to pay for it. So let's fix the reimbursement and also get an on-demand that works.
Our next speaker is Kathleen Collins, followed by Jason Anthony.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kathleen Collins, and I'm on the board of Disabled in Action and also with the Downstate New York Adapt, another organization. And I'd like to ask you, when you go into a vehicle, do you use a seatbelt and shoulder belt? Can you raise your hand if you like, or just look at me and say yes? Well, I don't get that. I don't have that opportunity. Actually, today I had no seatbelt, no shoulder belt, and last night when I went after an hour and 20 minutes waiting for an Access-A-Ride vehicle that was supposed to pick me up at 3:13 but did not pick me up to 4:40, I did not get a seatbelt nor shoulder belt. Also, this morning when I said to the gentleman, and I said, oh, I need a seatbelt and a shoulder belt, and I turned around, and he was opening up the back of the vehicle because he already had closed it, and I said to him, and I had already said to him a couple of times, I need a shoulder belt, I need a seatbelt when he was putting me in, but he doesn't understand. So I turned around, and I didn't even have the back securement devices on. So I'm like looking at him, and he's like, oh, yeah, I'll put them on. He put the back securement devices on. I was like, holy crap, I would have had only the 2 front things on. And my arm is starting to hurt. I know a couple of times it would hurt me a little bit when I would get out of the car when I didn't have a seatbelt and shoulder belt because I'd be holding on for dear life. But now it's getting worse. And it's because of my rides. And people tell me, I just got an offer to go into the demand program. I looked at the contract. It says they will not be responsible if I don't get a seatbelt or shoulder belt. So who am I going to complain to? I'm supposed to complain to the Tax and Limousine Commissioner. I did complain to the commissioner in person. Nothing's being done by anybody. I'm at the end of my rope. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jason Anthony, followed by Miriam Fisher.
Good morning, General. Good morning to the rest of the board. Jason Anthony here once again on a Wednesday morning. Let's address the incident that happened yesterday afternoon on the J train. J as a Jason, of course, between 121st Street and Sutton Boulevard, Archer Avenue, JFK Airport. There was an all-160 that got disabled between both stations. I saw the news reports, even TikTok videos that were circulating since yesterday afternoon. I wonder, what if we had a case like this, how could we evacuate people with disability? Because seeing a FDNY truck helping riders to get off the tracks, that doesn't make any sense. Because God forbid any person could fall down of those escalators. So we should think, in other words, rethink our contingency plans regarding situations that could happen, just like this one. It could happen again on the New York City subway, it could happen on an elevated track, it could happen underground, it could happen on Metro North, it could happen on the Long Island Railroad. We should be more than ready for emergencies just like this one. So with that, wrap it up. I'll see you guys on Friday, hopefully on Subway Day.
Our next speaker is Miriam Fisher, followed by Andy Quito.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Reaffirming what my colleague Jessica Murray said, elevator outages daily, numerous escalators also. Settle the lawsuit on monitoring elevator maintenance. Announcements. Elevator outage announcements are not always available for people who don't have cell phones. We need signs, we need announcements on the platform. We have digital signs on arrival of the next train to the minute, but not of outages. Here, Washington, D.C., the same digital signs that look familiar to us on the train, but it says elevator outage. So many people are aware of it and can be planned like those of us who are not tied to an elevator can do when we know the schedule has changed, the route has changed, the trains have changed. The survey, we know the MTA reads and reports on the surveys that measure passenger safety concerns. The safety definition also needs to be written with real concerns about the elevator breakdown and people getting stranded and needing EMS support. These are not perceptions, these are real occurrences. Benches. Removal of benches in many subways, often in stations where the homeless congregate. Benches are needed by people with disabilities, seniors, bad backs, knees. The leading benches are useless. I don't see them used, and they don't serve to substitute for real benches, and I think they're a waste of money.
Thank you for your
bathroom.
comment. Our next speaker is Andy Quito, followed by Andrew Ryan. Our next speaker is Andrew Ryan.
Good morning, friends. I'm Andrew Ryan, President of the Citizens Budget Commission, and today I appreciate the opportunity to make 4 simple points. First, we look forward to the MTA swiftly and smartly implementing congestion pricing, which is needed to support the current capital plan. Insufficient investment to maintain our existing system in a state of good repair will impair not only those assets, but our economy and quality of life. Second, congratulations on releasing your 20-year needs assessment. In significant ways, it's an improvement over prior assessments, providing more standardized, unconstrained, and disaggregated assessment of current assets, and its consistent and systematic analysis of the costs and benefits of expansion projects is the right approach. Third, in releasing that, the MTA leadership's full-throated support of the need to keep current assets in a state of good repair was so welcome. It's paramount, we believe, before expanding the system, lest the current network deteriorate to the point of frequent failure. Finally, while the needs assessment did a better job than ever before, laying bare the system's precarious position, its omission of the cost, timelines, and impact of the projects to rebuild and improve the system denies the public and policymakers the information needed to have the substantive debate about investment priorities. We don't have a clue right now how much it would cost, for example, over the next 5 years to begin bringing the system to adequate condition and keeping it there. Is that 40 billion? Is that 80 billion? Is that twice as much? We need this to consider what trade-offs may well be required by the reality of resource constraints, vendor constraints, capacity constraints. Should we even be eyeing system expansion lest that divert funds from state of good repair and our current system deteriorate? So we strongly urge you to provide an addendum with this information so that we can have that robust public discussion. Thank you for all your work and my ride here and my ride, the one train up to my office. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Iris Kelly, followed by Lisa Daglian.
Yes, my name is Iris Kelly. We have issues here with the travel time in the morning. I have they're sending me a multi-car service when I had to be going into work on time, and I know what's going on with this. Like, they shouldn't be sending me share car for people who are going to work in the morning. They have to be there on time. They always come late. They come in on time, they bring me in super late, which is not good. And they need to improve that, make it better. Then for other days with Accessoride, it's been otherwise been pretty good. I would say it's been all right, but not completely correct. Then in terms of other, what else can I say? I'm trying to think what to say now. Okay. Also with even the railroad even had problems. Changing time slots, changing trains. 1024 train always came lined up between Brooklyn and Queens, Manhattan, Long Island and Queens, going to Brooklyn. But no, they changed back one number to 1023. Then the Manhattan train comes in at 1024. Mine came in, I missed my train at 1023. Then that means I changed my another train trip and call Accessoride to say they had to change my trip again just to get me home. I'm home super late. Now that is ridiculous. They need to put the time back though they had it. I always made my connections every year, no matter what we did, every week. Well, Accessoride could improve a lot of things, including with this other thing with the demand. They make a decent pricing, but you can be able to go get to work even. Maybe you have a better thing for me to get into work, but I can't have the pricing pay an expensive price for it. To have better service than that. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lisa Daglian, followed by Deborah Greif.
Hi, good morning. I'm Lisa Daglian, Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. Just this week, we've gone from mudslides to mudders to mitzvah, and it's only Wednesday. First, many thanks to the hardworking men and women who got service running on the Hudson Line by Monday morning. Talk about a Herculean effort, but it made the day for thousands of Metro North commuters. That was unfortunately not the case for 7 line riders for whom lingering track work turned inches into hours, as President Davey said. However, even that malingering morning was brightened by transit workers who were helpful and cheerful even when riders, including this one, decidedly were not. Senator Schumer brought the mitzvah with a $3.4 billion capital investment grant for the second phase of the 2nd Avenue subway. Construction up to 125th Street will help right the wrong of the closure of the 2nd Avenue L there in 1940. Many promises and decades later, East Harlem residents will finally have a way to move rapidly north and south. The M15 bus tries, as SBS workhorses do, but the reality is that nothing beats a subway for speed. Sometimes a chicken beats a bus in traffic. We'd love to see the next phase of the 2nd Avenue subway extend south, the 3rd phase. Such an expansion would finally bring the promise of closer to the full-length 2nd Avenue subway that's been made for so many years. That's but one potential project in this 20-year needs assessment. That helps lay out where money from congestion pricing may go in the future, including essential state of good repair work so riders can keep moving, the literal nuts and bolts of keeping the lights on and trains running on time. But this crucial work is being threatened by baseless, petty lawsuits that are delaying funding and affecting the ability to award contracts, thanks to the murky timeline for capital. Funding for resiliency, accessibility, state of good repair, and expansion projects won't come from our municipal senator, but through money raised from congestion
Thank you
pricing.
for your comment. Our next speaker is Deborah Greif, followed by Miriam Greenfield.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Deborah Greif. First, I want to say I totally understand what Jean Ryan's saying about the express buses. The buses she uses comes out of Ulmer Park, and they are not the greatest depot at times because they're not very friendly with people with disabilities. It took me a few years to finally get them to understand. When you come to get me when I'm waiting at the bus stop, you pull into the bus stop. You also drop me off in the bus stop, not 5 feet away. So I think what they did, unfortunately, is they took all those drivers and they put them on the express route who don't want to get trained, who act like we're annoyance because I dare to want to go on a bus. There are times I don't want to use Accessorite if I have to go somewhere local in my area. So, and yes, I could take those buses, but after what I heard with Jean, I'm like, uh-oh, I'm not going to take that chance. I'll rather be squished on the subway or wait for Accessorite even if we're stuck in traffic. But what I would like to also see is I'm not always in favor of elevators. I like ramps. I really love the ramp at 42nd Street Port Authority because I know I don't have to worry about it breaking down. I don't have to worry about an announcement. I can go up and down. They have it on the Brighton line at Avenue H for the Q train. I'd like to see a lot of the stations be ramped that can be, or figure a way out to do it because ramps don't break, and it would be a lot better because this way I don't have to worry about announcements. Oh, because I'm not going to hear your ramp is out. I will hear your elevator's out. So that's what I would like to see. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Miriam Greenfield, followed by Rachel Foss.
Hello. So my concern is with the elevators. So I take the the 34th Street and Herald Square stop. A lot of times the elevator is completely full of urine, and sometimes that gate is open so I can go down and use the New Jersey elevator, but then sometimes if it's later at night, that gate is closed, and then I can't use the elevator at all because it's just somebody's just completely used it as a toilet. So I don't know if something could be done about that. Maybe some type of, when I was in the UK, you had a card to use and you would tap it on and that's how you got elevator accessibility. And if you were found if people were reporting, this person uses their key card and it's trashed afterwards, that's how they were able to control that type of thing. So thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Rachel Foss, followed by Joshua Annan.
Good morning. Boss, I'm the Senior Policy Advisor for Reinvent Albany. We advocate for more transparent and accountable New York government, including for authorities like the MTA. Reinvent Albany strongly supports congestion pricing because it's the law and has been shown globally to reduce motor vehicle congestion, air pollution, and travel times, and will raise $15 billion to restore and improve transit. Our new analysis details congestion pricing's big benefits to the MTA's in-house labor force. Our main findings are, first, that MTA workers doing in-house capital work will get $3.2 billion of the $15 billion congestion pricing is required to raise for the MTA's 2020-24 capital plan. Over the last 16 years, the MTA's in-house labor force has gotten $17.5 billion of the $83.5 billion, or about 21%, spent by the MTA on capital projects, like those to be funded by congestion pricing. Additionally, on congestion pricing, in light of New York City's decision to remove the cap on electric for-hire vehicles, we recommend the MTA assess a higher congestion pricing fee on FHVs. We urge the MTA to adopt a minimum daytime toll of at least $3 per FHV trip. This is more than the additional daytime per ride toll of $1.50 to $2.75 considered by the Traffic Mobility Review Board. The city's decision to remove the cap on electric FHVs radically changes the equation and risks producing significant new traffic congestion unless the streets are properly priced. Lastly, I'd like to reiterate our support for an addendum to be released for the 20-year needs assessment, detailing the costs needed to bring our system to a state of good repair at a minimum over the next 5 years and ideally the next 20 years. As this has been done in prior assessments, and as noted by my colleague Andrew Ryan of Citizen Budget Commission, cost information is crucial to ensure the right investments are made and the system does not deteriorate. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Our next speaker is Joshua Annan, followed by Yuki Endo.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Joshua Annan, and I'm a student at Borough of Manhattan Community College, and thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Fares are a heavy financial burden on student riders, and I believe that fare should be expanded to all college students and New Yorkers at 200% of the federal poverty level. Most students, especially CUNY students, do not live on campus and depend on transit to travel between home, school, and work. Riders still face many issues with the transit system day to day, and I personally have had to deal with many abrupt service delays and changes along the RT Lexington Avenue line, with the issue of extreme overcrowding, and so it's kind of interesting that fares could still rise in such an environment. MetroCard costs are already a barrier for students, and a recent survey by the Center for an Urban Future found that during this period, affording a MetroCard cost was the biggest financial barrier for students trying to attend college. Students don't need another barrier to getting their education, and transportation should be affordable to all New Yorkers. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Yuki Endo, followed by Michael Ring.
Good morning. My name is Yuki Endo from Jackson Heights and member of Passenger United. This might be my last day at MTA Board Meeting since my mom and I are moving back to Japan on November 30th. I am outraged at MTA Long Island Railroad for cutting Mineola's service on Ronkonkoma branch. Mineola is a major busy train station, and all trains to and from Grand Central and Penn Station need to stop there. I also like MTA Long Island Railroad. It should not use any charter or school buses that has New York State DOT or New York City DOT violations, because you're clearly risking passengers and bus drivers' life after incident on New Jersey. MTA Long Island Railroad needs to keep 30-minute service at Mineola Station daily. For New York City Transit, I enjoy riding the open stroller buses, but some strollers are too big to fit in the spaces. I am grateful to see bike racks on Q44 Select Bus, and sometimes M60 Select Bus and M35 buses need more buses during major events like Vegandale festivals, etc. Every 15 minutes, including $7 round trip Express 80 bus too, because M35 buses got overcrowded. Every time I'm on elevated services, Satoa, MTA Long Island Railroad, Metro North, and New Jersey Transit trains, light rails, and PATH stations, I also check for a roof on the train cars to make sure no train surfing, because surfing on the trains or on light rails are extremely dangerous. I also enjoy free fare buses on the BX60 bus, BX18A. I love to see free fares on Q102 during the 63rd Street tunnel reconstruction to make easier to Roosevelt Islanders. I would love to see S89 bus to operate 7 days in order to get better connection between Staten Island and New Jersey Transit light rail station.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michael Ring, followed by Michael Howard.
Hiya, I'm Michael Ring. A visual description is that I'm a middle-aged white guy, and I got a green hat that says Disabled in Action, the organization I'm representing today. I want to talk about Accessoride And we've talked about it a little, and it's debatable about how well it works, how well data is gathered. We've heard that elevator outage information is kind of fuzzy. You have surveys that are not random samples of accessoride users and that show their satisfaction. And this new phase 2 of the pilot program is clearly just an exercise in gathering data on how accessoride users deal with different options. It's not really there to make our lives much easier, because it really is, it's very frustrating to have limits on your length of your ride or how many rides you can have. But you guys do have one system that works really well for people with disabilities. It's the taxi reimbursement system. It allows people who go to work to travel spontaneously and on a regular basis. If you'd have to arrange a plan in advance. I mean, I think some of you guys know how this works. You call the day before, and you'd say, I'd like to use taxi reimbursement to book my travel. And then you mail in the receipt. But this only works if you travel within your own borough. I live in Park Slope. My trip here is like 20 minutes when there's no traffic, maybe 15 minutes. But my trip to see my mother-in-law in Sheepshead Bay is much further away. I can book taxi reimbursement to see my mother-in-law, but I can't come here. It's one city. So I understand you're trying to figure out how to move this program forward, make it work globally. This will allow people with disabilities to go to work, because at the end of your workday, you don't really know when you're going to want your ride home. Could be 5 o'clock, could be 7 o'clock. And the taxi reimbursement gives you that kind of flexibility. I hope this could work for everybody, and it also will save you money, because the taxis are cheaper.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Michael Howard, followed by Michael Cohen.
Morning, MTA board members. My name is Michael J. Howard. I prefer Mike, spelled M-I-K-E. First of all, I want to say that yesterday afternoon, in my own eyes, I saw 2 to 3 teenagers while I was riding the R train. The car number is, I think the car number is 9598. Back to what I was saying, I saw about 2 or 3 teenagers went through the driver's booth, which is the back. That is the back car. I was on the last car of the R train going from 46th Street to 57th Street and 7th Avenue. And the stop I saw the teenagers come in from is Queens Plaza, riding from Queens Plaza to Lexington Avenue and 59th Street Station. And when I saw those 2 to 3 teenagers went into that the driver's booth, they switched on the lights off and on yesterday. And I was like, what the hell? I mean, excuse my language, but that's my report right there from yesterday. And another thing, y'all need to have surveillance cameras in those R160s and R179 cars, so that way nobody can go into that driver's or conductor's booth. You know what I mean? So that's all I have to say. Hopefully I see y'all sometime this week or next month. Thank you.
Our last speaker is Michael Cohen.
Hi, I'm Michael Cohen. I think the bus service needs some improvement. I think there needs to be more buses. I think there needs to be more frequent bus service. I think that there should be more of those bigger buses on more routes. Like sometimes when I take the crosstown bus on like 66th Street, I see that the bus is not all that big compared to the number of students and other people who get on the bus. Like it gets very cramped in a hurry. It's like a lot of people get on, and by the time it gets to the west side, there's no more room for hardly anyone to get on. There's hardly any room left to stand on the bus. It's pretty much packed. And I wrote to the MTA about getting bigger buses on that route and some other routes. And I've often been told that there's no way that the bus stops can accommodate a larger bus. Like, they may be able to accommodate one a few feet bigger, but never one that bends in the middle. Because I've just noticed that on some bus routes, you get so many people on a regular sized bus, and then there's nowhere left to stand, and the bus stop is placed where it is, but like there's room to place the bus stop at a different location so that you can fit more people on there. So it might make sense to relocate some bus stops for the larger buses. And I think that there should be more bus routes to more places in New York City, and that there should be more options to take the bus to different places, and that there should be additional service in many routes, especially late at night. And I think that needs to be done soon.
Thank you for your comment. Chair Lieber, that concludes public comment.
Thank you, Lucille, and thank you to all the public speakers who participated today. Board members, today you're going to have a special presentation on system resiliency and system recovery after the storm that hit the city and surrounding areas a few weeks back. But before that presentation and before my update to the board, I want to convene executive session to allow the board to discuss matters related to collective bargaining. May I have a motion to convene executive session pursuant to Public Officer Law Section 1051E, please? Mr. Miranda, thank you. Second, Mr. Mack. All in favor? Any opposition? We're in executive session. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Donna Charles. I am a station appearance maintainer. We basically maintain the appearance of restrooms, waiting rooms, platforms, sidewalks. We mop, sweep, dust, sanitize, salt, shovel snow, whatever it takes to keep our stations clean.
When you work a line job to go in between the stations, you take out a truck. We have cleaning supplies in it. Certain stations don't have facilities to keep the buckets and stuff like that, so there's always a bucket on the truck, a mop on the truck, and then basically we work out of the truck. And if we have to do quick graffiti removal or something like that, we have something to clean it up with.
I'm a platform cleaner. It makes me happy that my job is important because it's important to me to make sure that the people want to come back, that they have a clean place to come to.
My favorite part of being a station appearance maintainer is the general public, just getting their positive feedback. We had commuters just say, thank you, and we appreciate everything that you guys do, just making it safe for us to be out here to and from, work and home.
My work impacts the Long Island community because we just make it safe for the customer itself. We keep the conditions of all the stations clean, you don't want a dirty station. We do just more than cleaning. We help out in any way we can.
My favorite part of the job is meeting new people, the people I work with, experiencing new things. I like my job, and I wake up every morning and know that I have a great job to get to go to.
What does a system operator do?
My name is Sejan Edi, BMT Chief System Operator. I have 27 years with New York City Transit. As a Chief System Operator, I'm in charge of the supplying of DC power, traction power.
The system operator's responsibility is to oversee all the third rail power that we provide to run the trains in the New York City Transit system. The way that we power up the third rail is we get electricity from Con Edison, will go to our substation, which is converting the AC from Con Edison's high voltage into 650 volt DC, and then from there going into the third rail, which power the trains.
A typical day for system operator involves general order. General order, or GO, it's a planned work outage. Normally they're working next to the third rail or nearby, so they want power off so they can work safely. Any emergency happens out in the field, RCC give us a call to have a power off on a certain line, certain track.
The Power Control Center controls remotely all the equipment out on the field. This equipment that we control is called the MTU, which is the Master Terminal Units.
We take power off instantly by operating these buttons on the board. As for RCC requests, we normally take power off from gap to gap for emergencies. Red means the power is on. When it goes green, that means the power is off to that track. It's good to know that the work I do helps to keep the employees safe and the system moving.
I think if there are no customer service ambassadors, there would be lots and lots of people taking the wrong train.
A customer service ambassador is a frontline contact providing fast-changing, accurate information, especially during service disruptions.
We're here to direct you, assist you, and be patient as well.
The qualities that make a good customer service ambassador are patience, communication, following instructions, and just pretty much being a people person.
Getting lost in New York it's really easy. That's what we're here for, to help them. So every day, I show people how to use the phone. We have this app called Train Time. It tells you the time everything comes, schedule changes, tells you advanced scheduling as well in case you need to come in a week.
My most memorable day at work, we had an elderly woman come off of the airport. We assisted her to getting to her family, which was in another town. She had never been to New York before. She was completely lost. She thanked us several times, and I was able to help this woman get to her family. That's the motivation. Just helping people in general is seeing their face.
I like to help people a lot. You know, seeing people happy and getting to their place.
It makes me feel really happy, especially that I know they're getting to their destination safely. We serve with pride.
What does a depot bus dispatcher do?
My name is Veronica Torres. I'm a surface line dispatcher. I've been with Transit for 15 years, but I've been a dispatcher for about 6 months. Being a dispatcher is a big opportunity to broaden my experiences. I like working with people, so that also gives me an opportunity to interact with the bus operators and other people as well. From the time that the bus operators come to report, we have to make sure that they're in full uniform, that they're fit for duty. Then we also have to give them the buses to go out into service, make sure that the service is done on time, that the buses are safe and fully functional. Dispatchers that are outside on post are watching the buses, make sure that they run on time, making sure that the customers are okay, answering questions on the road, making sure safety and compliance is at 100.
We have the yard dispatchers, we have the crew dispatchers, and we have the general dispatchers. And these are all various functions. In addition to all these three functions, we also have the road dispatchers who goes out on the road to take care of the day-to-day activities on the road.
Patience and empathy make for a great dispatcher. Because I've been a bus operator for so long, I understand what it is that they do and what it entails, and I'm very empathetic to what their needs are. What we do is so important as a whole. Without the dispatchers' cohesiveness and working together, the bus operators also in unison with us, because we can't do our job without the bus operators also doing their job. So with everyone working together, it just makes for a smooth process.
What does a wrecker do?
Hi, my name is Devin Mullen. I'm an assistant maintainer at the Verrazano Bridge, and I've been with Bridge and Tunnel Authority for 5 years now. Well, basically, we make sure that anything that happens on the bridge, whether it's a collision or a disabled vehicle, contractors working, we make sure everyone gets on and off the bridge safely. Any 5-minute delay turns into 20 minutes of traffic.
The city is busy. Rush hour is tough. Roadways are congested to begin with, so we want to make sure that we can keep those roadways clear, and that's, main function of a record driver. Every day they save the day. That little disabled vehicle, if that disabled vehicle is not removed, a lot of people are not getting to work in the morning. So that quick response is going to determine how the rest of the day is going to go for a lot of people. They are the go-to guys. We depend on them on a daily basis, and they perform their job very well.
Our truck is our main tool. We make sure it works well, and then it serves us well. The light duty wrecker is usually we use for flat tires, overheat, small vehicles. The medium duties, they're basically utility. Anything we need other than tractor trailers and heavy trucks. Anything that requires heavy boom lifting, winch outs, things like that, we're going to use the heavy wreckers. Working on the roadway, it's a dangerous condition. You have vehicles flying by you at 60 miles an hour. People aren't paying attention half the time, so you do run the risk of getting hit.
So they never know what's going to happen when they're up there. I mean, there's different types of, disables, there's all kinds of different vehicles, there's trucks, there's hazmat vehicles that are carrying chemicals, so there's always a challenge when they get up there.
We're first on scene a lot of the time. We just try to help people. We try to get the bridge moving, the traffic moving, get people where they gotta go. And we try to get them there safely. It gives you a sense of responsibility, and it's satisfying at the end of the day to know that you are part of keeping this running and keeping everyone safe.
Hi, my name is Ryan Motley. I'm a stock worker here at East New York Depot. I've been with MTA Bus for 1 year, 4 months. As a stock worker, typical day in the job is issue parts to the maintenance facility. I process transactions. I do express issues, inter-unit transfers. I also help restock parts or receive parts from different manufacturers, give them their respective locations. We do cycle counts to find any discrepancies within our inventory also. Here at the East New York Depot, which is the central maintenance facility, we actually process a lot of parts for various depots.
Here in this stock room, it's a CMF, Central Maintenance Facility. Buses come in for major work, so we store bigger items, high dollar value items, engines, radiators, transmissions, generators, motors. Because when the buses come here, they're here for an extended period of time to get a complete overhaul. So whatever buses that are active in our fleet right now, we have the parts for it.
We also store cleaning products for our cleaners that are located in the depot to help them get their job done. We help the maintainers get the correct parts needed for the buses to make service. We have our regular chores of making sure that the stockroom is clean, no tripping hazards on the floor. That's one of our daily chores as stock workers to ensure the safety of the operation in the stockroom itself.
In order to be a good stock worker, one of the best qualities you need to have, the top ones are good retention, safety, responsibility. You want to have that kind of characteristic in you to try to do your best in everything you do and deliver the best. It makes me smile. It makes me feel good knowing that I work for a company where it has a lot to offer. We all play a different role in what we do.
Okay. We're resuming. While in executive session, the board discussed and voted firmly on labor agreements between the MTA and labor unions. Now to some other business. I mentioned at the start of the meeting we're going to hear from each of the agencies about the impacts of the massive rainstorm that hit New York City at the end of September. Agency staff and the operations teams are going to take us through the response efforts, lessons learned, and how all of this informs the MTA and all of our stakeholders about the system's resiliency against extreme weather events and highlight some of the challenges we face on that front. Let's start it off by hearing from MTA Chief Safety Officer Pat Warren. By the way, Pat is our leader when we do we have emergency management episodes of that process, and I just want to give a special shout out to your team. We've acknowledged transit and the railroads, but your team also does a fantastic job. Pat.
Thank you, Chair. They are a great team. Let me highlight that the storms like Ida and Ophelia are different from Sandy, where flooding was a result of storm surge, not dramatic rainfall rates. While Ida is dubbed the type of storm that happens once every 100 years, due to global warming, we are experiencing, with some regularity, more storms delivering high rates of rainfall, more than 2 inches per hour, which exceeds the 1 3/4 inch per hour design of the New York City drainage system. Following Ida, we studied the effects of the flash flooding and developed recommendations. Let me just do this. Following Ida, we studied the effects of the flash flooding and developed recommendations to mitigate risks. For example, we identified that raising curbs around station entrances better diverts water to street drains, and clearing city catch basins maximizes the effectiveness of the city's water runoff system, avoiding back pressure pushing water into the subway. And further, recognizing that water moves to the lowest points in the system, we pre-positioned pumps at these locations to expedite water removal. We put a lot of resources into mitigating the potential disruptions caused by flash flooding to significant effect. Bottom line is we kept the city moving throughout the storm. The operating agencies are about to run through the effects from and the responses to Ophelia, and C&D will follow up with a description of the capital projects undertaken to mitigate flood risks. Now about Ophelia. The headquarters in each of the agencies expect seasonal storms and rehearse preparations and responses with tabletop exercises and other drills. So when the storm developed quickly, early Thursday, the 29th of September, we got to work. Our incident command system was activated, we pre-positioned resources, and we notified the public that they should monitor our various communication systems to understand how to navigate through service outages. A scan of this timeline illustrates just how quickly the storm developed and affected service. In short, if we had not been ready, it would have been hard to catch up. Now the agencies will tell their stories, beginning with Jim Compton from New York City Transit.
Thank you, Pat. As Pat mentioned, subways undertook a series of precautions ahead of the storm. We proactively inspected and cleared drains, pre-positioned pump trains, opened storm centers to monitor conditions, and staged personnel to rapidly respond as necessary. As we now know, those preparations were critical to allowing us to respond and restore service so quickly. The heavy rain led to flooding at 45 stations and 8 yards, mostly in Brooklyn, Manhattan, and the Bronx. In all, 11 subway lines were either suspended or had severe service disruptions at some point during the day, with delays on most other lines. Much of this was caused by torrential downpour in parts of Brooklyn during the late morning rush hour, although there were additional downpours during the afternoon. As an example of how localized the conditions were, the 7 line, which primarily serves Queens, was unaffected and delivered over 90% on-time performance that day. Once the flooding occurred, those pre-positioned emergency response teams got to work clearing the water. Over the course of the day, New York City Transit pumped an additional 4 gallons of water out of the subway, with a peak of 228,000 gallons per hour. This included removing water from tracks, tunnels, yards, and stations. Once the water was removed, equipment was tested and inspected and serviced as necessary. For example, signals forces needed to reset 117 water log switches and 120 signals. Thanks to these incredible efforts by thousands of employees across subways, most service was restored by the middle of the evening rush hour. This included restoring service on the 2 line between Manhattan and the Bronx to provide alternate service for some Metro-North customers affected by flooding. Overnight crews worked to restore service on the N line in Brooklyn and Franklin Shuttle, both of which were restored early Saturday morning. I would like to highlight that despite the severe disruptions caused by the storm, approximately 45% of subway trips ran on time that Friday. This was in part due to the localized nature of the flooding and allowed customers affected by disruptions to find alternate routes. Our colleagues in buses also did yeoman's work keeping customers moving by bridging the gaps where subway service was disrupted. Our customer service teams, including station agents, also worked hard to keep customers informed of service changes and helping them get to their destinations. We are fortunate to have a resilient system, a solid plan to prepare for storms, an incredibly hardworking team dedicated to keeping New York moving. I'd like to especially thank all our employees who are out operating trains, providing customer service, removing water, and servicing equipment to get the system back so quickly. Next up, Justin Vonacek from Metro-North.
All right, thank you, Jim. So as a result of this storm, a key section of track in the Bronx became completely submerged in water, impacting all 3 lines. The events began around 9 a.m. when we received a high water alarm notification from Mott Haven Yard in the Bronx. Within 30 minutes, the water had risen 2 feet, making the section of track impassable. This led to suspending service to and from Grand Central Terminal on all 3 lines for over 7 hours. We quickly implemented our alternate service plan designed for these occurrences. This required New York City Transit to cross-honor our fares, which allow many of our customers to proceed via subway up to stations near Yankees 153rd, Wakefield, and Williamsbridge, and then make their way over to the Hudson, Harlem, and New Haven lines for service north and east of the flooded area. But flooding in the Bronx was not the only area impacted by Ophelia. Along the Hudson line, 10 locations sustained water above the running rail. Track 3 near Dobbs Ferry was obstructed by a tree, and in Greystone, a washout blocked Track 3. And on the Harlem line, a washout, along with damage to a signal box cabinet near Valhalla, resulted in the loss of all service north of North White Plains until Saturday morning as crews worked throughout the night to restore this section of track. And on the New Haven line, there were 3 locations where the high water rendered all tracks impassable. In total, our employees had to contend with multiple downed trees, 2 washouts, 19 high water incidents, 1 flooded substation, and 10 damaged switch motors. Overall, the single storm event impacted nearly 400 trains and ultimately impacted OTP for the month by 2 percentage points. Thanks to the Herculean effort by our employees, we were able to restore hourly service on the Hudson and New Haven lines by 4:30 p.m. that same day. By 6 p.m., hourly service was provided on the Harlem line from Grand Central Terminal to North White Plains, and bus service was provided between White Plains and Mount Kisco with train service north. Normal service was restored on all 3 lines for Saturday morning. So while Ophelia had a major impact on our system, it is obviously not the only resilience challenge we have faced recently. At approximately 9:45 a.m. this past Saturday, not even a month after Ophelia, a mudslide was reported south of Scarborough train station, which prevented trains from operating between Tarrytown and Croton Harmon. Our crews sprung to action, working around the clock throughout the weekend, moving over 350 cubic yards of soil and debris and another 250 cubic yards of rock and cement walls. Once the material was removed, they worked to repair the rail, ties, and third rail infrastructure on tracks 2 and 4 that was damaged as a result of the slide. All this work was done in time to provide service for Monday morning. Work to clear the remaining 2 tracks is ongoing, and we continue to work with all parties involved to stabilize the slope so we can restore service on the remaining tracks. I would like to recognize and thank all the employees who help restore service in each of these events. Because they rise to the occasion each and every time, it is easy to forget the level of effort and dedication required to safely restore service with minimal impact to our customers. I would also like to thank New York City Transit Subways and Buses, MTA C&D, MTA PD, and MTA Emergency Management for their assistance and support in each of these incidents. It is truly a team effort. I would now like to hand it over to Paul Dietland, VP M&W for Long Island Railroad.
Good morning. Like the other agencies, we began planning and preparing for the storm early based on the forecasts. Our operating groups held storm meetings to plan for the pre-positioning and deployment of our workforce, our equipment, and our communication process we would use throughout the day. On the morning of the storm, we activated our incident command and the virtual conference line to allow for open and direct communication between the operating departments. So we began to see impacts from the storm during the morning rush with significant flooding in the Long Island City area, Harold near Line 2, and most significantly, Midday Storage Yard. Additionally, Atlantic Terminal saw significant water inflows from the street level through the platform emergency egress stairways. Later that day, flooding shifted to the Long Beach and Far Rockaway branches. All of these areas have been historically prone to flooding due to elevation and proximity to nearby waterways. Ultimately, the high waters led to service suspensions on these two branches. As each of the departments were out managing the storm response, we were dealing with floodwaters at 17 locations, managing passenger and equipment trains throughout the system, coordinating alternative service with Nice Bus for the Long Beach and Far Rock, as well as messaging to our customers. As soon as the water levels were reduced, our prepositioned forces began the process of inspection, repair, and testing of the signal and power infrastructure. By 10 p.m., we had run our test trains and were able to restore service on the two branches. By Saturday, midday, we were able to complete our inspections and testing in Midday Storage Yard and return that to full service. Bottom line, effective planning, communication, and response from all our departments was key to minimizing impacts to our service. I must thank our workforce for the extraordinary efforts during and after the storm. Now I'll turn it over to Rich Hildebrand, Vice President and Chief of Operations at Bridges and Tunnels.
Please, thank you. Thank you, Paul, and good morning, everyone. At Bridges and Tunnels, operational impacts from Ophelia were limited to off-property flooding on access and egress roadways. Highway flooding throughout the service area caused traffic impacts on the Verrazano Narrows, RFK, Bronx Whitestone, and Throgs Neck bridges, as well as a flooding condition on an off-property entrance ramp to the Hugh L. Carey Tunnel, which blocked traffic accessing the tunnel from local streets in Brooklyn. B&T continually monitors weather forecasts and began our preparedness in advance of Ophelia's arrival, allowing us to efficiently respond to and mitigate issues that arose throughout the storm. B&T responded to assist our partners with MTA buses that became stranded in flooded areas on Randall's Island. We assisted Con Ed with the restoration of power to critical systems at the Throgs Neck Bridge when an off-property electric feeder failed due to flooding, and responded to clear drains and remove debris at problematic off-property locations which flood and impact B&T's continued delivery of service. Due to the efforts of the entire B&T team and our partners throughout the storm, we were able to restore normal Friday evening rush hour traffic operations at all of our facilities. Unless there are any questions, I'll now turn it over to the Vice President of Resiliency, Sustainability, and Planning, Eric Wilson from C&D.
Thanks, Rich. Good morning. As we think about the capital implications of these events, we're taking a look at the historic record and understanding how intense rainfall impacts the system. And I want to share that as we're defining intense rainfall here, we're keeping in mind the design capacity of the city sewer system, which is 1.75 inches per hour. And as we look at recent storms, we see that several since 2007 have exceeded this amount. In particular, Ida, Tropical Storm Ida in September of 2021, exceeded that significantly, as well as significant total rainfall, setting a new city record. And then Ophelia almost matched that level, not quite in terms of intensity, but in terms of total magnitude of rainfall. Each of these storms impacts the city in different ways, in different geographies. Ida, for example, was particularly impactful in central Queens, whereas Ophelia, we saw big impacts in central southern Brooklyn, on the east side of Manhattan, as well as the southern Bronx. So we learned more about vulnerabilities with each storm, and we're tracking them. some of the causes of stormwater flooding, particularly in yards, along the subway system rights-of-way and subway system stations, include some elements that we control, including our drainage infrastructure, our drainage connections to the city sewer system, our pumping and hydraulic systems that remove water from yards and rights-of-way, as well as partner infrastructure. And here I'm highlighting a couple of scenarios with a couple of elements from DEP, the catch basins, as well as curb heights maintained by city DOT. Each of these are intended to prevent stormwater runoff, as well as sewer surcharging into our pumping systems. And when one or multiple of these elements aren't able to perform due to torrential rainfall, that results in flooding and water accumulation in our facilities. So in terms of Ophelia impacts within New York City, we've identified 45 subway stations with disrupted service. I also want to highlight on this map that locations that actually disrupted service are not coterminous with stations. That water can intrude the system at different points, and so we're tracking both of these. Water can enter the system in the rights-of-way, at portals, in yards, and they're perhaps more consequential in terms of service than impacts to stations themselves. So this is really something we're keeping an eye on. I want to highlight that 8 yards, subway yards were impacted in Ophelia, 3 bus depots, as well as 2 commuter railroad yards within the city. Some of our toolkit to address stormwater flooding, particularly in underground facilities that we control, includes raised steps, elevated vents. We're looking at our pumping and hydraulic systems, and also looking at backflow prevention so that we can prevent the city's storm sewer from backing into our hydraulic systems. There's many interventions that we continue to work with the city because our facilities touch other built environment elements. And so here highlighting some facilities maintained by New York City DOT where they look at milling to increase the depth of the curb at the street to store more water. We're working with them on street reconstructions to make sure there's sufficient grade away from MTA facilities. As well as working with our partners in the Department of Environmental Protection on both operational and long-term measures, including cleaning catch basins before events, cleaning siphons and storm sewers before events, as well as looking at the overall capacity of the city's storm sewer system. So taking a look at some of the stormwater protection mitigations that we've been installing over recent years, we're also tracking the performance of these measures. So since 2007, MTA has installed stormwater protections at 28 stations across the subway system. 7 of these reported flooding on September 29th during Ophelia. We're also learning about the efficacy of operational measures. So pointing out to you here that DEP, as part of the city's flash flood emergency protocol, DEP goes out to clean catch basins around some sensitive subway stations. They did this at 16 catch basins that were identified by the board's post-IDA task force working group. And only 3 of these reported flooding on September 29th. So this operational mechanism is, I think, very effective. We have several projects that are underway, also identified by the board working group after IDA. We have 44 of these that are in design and construction throughout the system, shown here in orange. I want to point out that one of these includes an upgrade of a undersized storm sewer connection on 81st and Broadway that led to service impacts along the 1 train on the west side. So excited that project is underway. And then going forward, we're looking to integrate more resiliency measures into the capital plan. So I want to highlight a relationship here that we're realizing with pumping infrastructure, particularly that 32 pump rooms identified for potential capital investment serve 20 locations impacted by one or more recent rainfall events. So we're taking a look at all of our assets that are sensitive in this area and anticipating them as we continue capital planning. I want to take a second to recognize that the importance of resilient design practices as a protection mechanism. So a few examples here of elevations of sensitive equipment elevated as part of Sandy coastal storm surge protections. And as Pat said, storm surge is a different kind of flooding, but we found that these elevations were also functional and effective during Ophelia by keeping sensitive equipment up and elevated out of harm's way. We were able to restore the system that much quicker and get things back online after the flooding was cleared. So examples of substations, signal cases, there's some elevated infrastructure at Coney Island Yard with utility conduits. And then also, I think it's worth pointing out the third track project at Long Island Railroad. This is adjacent to the new Hyde Park station, where a new underpass was constructed under the station. As part of this underpass construction, C&D built pumping infrastructure that was sufficiently sized to manage the amount of water that was accumulating here. And it earned Long Island Railroad praise from local elected officials who said, your underpasses were the only places that didn't flood during September 29th. So, I really want to underscore the importance of anticipating future risks as we're designing projects built today. Okay, so going forward, we're taking into account all these past storms, and we have our eye on 88 subway stations where water has occurred, 8 subway yards, 4 bus depots, and at least 2 commuter railroad yards within the city that have vulnerabilities. There's several actions that we're undertaking, including targeted interventions. I mentioned those 44 projects that are underway now, either in design and construction. We're also going to be needing to keep our eye on broader resiliency projects to reduce longer-term risks. The importance of resilient design as we're advancing capital investments and new projects, thinking about future risks and building that into the design of the projects now. And then very importantly, ongoing engagement with city entities that control adjacent infrastructure. This is in the context of the Flash Flood Task Force, looking at areas directly adjacent to MTA infrastructure, but also looking at a broader scope in terms of areas that might have broader neighborhood scale vulnerability. I do want to say we're taking these lessons that in working with New York City agencies, and we do anticipate similar conversations with our partner municipalities adjacent to our railroad rights of way outside of the city. So I want to underscore that climate change is underway, and we are keeping our eye on multiple risks at the same time as we're anticipating more and more rainfall. So coastal surge that Pat talked about that we experienced with the Hurricane Sandy, the 100-year flood is going to be 3 times more likely between now and the 2050s. With sea level rise, our coasts are approaching closer, increases of 30 inches between now and the 2050s. Extreme precipitation events like the one that we experienced on September 29th are going to become twice as likely between now and the 2050s. And then extreme heat events, the number of heat days that we're tracking above 90 degrees Fahrenheit that start to have some service-related impacts are going to triple between now and the 2050s. Given the urgency of climate change, the climate team has been busy this year. We were with you during Earth Day back in April to talk about our climate sustainability framework to reduce operational greenhouse gas emissions 85%. We incorporated resilience and sustainability measures into our 20-year needs assessment that was released at the beginning of this month. We announced a clean construction program also this month to reduce the construction-related emissions of MTA construction projects. We do anticipate releasing a climate action plan before the end of the year that will address both climate resilience and sustainability measures. And I think this is well timed to anticipate the 5-year capital plan that will be coming out next October to incorporate climate actions as well. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's the sum and substance of the presentation. I want to thank you all for the presentation today, but more important, the work that your organizations have done, both to prepare in advance and to manage on these kinds of days, and to Eric and the C&D planning team who's planning for the future. So all of those are super important. Comments or questions from the board? Mr. Miranda.
Thank you so much. This is an amazing presentation, and I commend the actions taken during these weather incidents. As a son of Puerto Rico, you grew up glued to the weather forecast. And I'm still surprised that some fellow New Yorkers sometimes get surprised by weather incidents. And we know that they are intensifying rapidly. When I watch the weather forecast, there's a lot of conversations about avoid roads or any other preventative measures. Is there a way that as we learn more about these weather incidents and the resiliency of the system, that there could be also notifications with the media and other places in which we can say this may affect the system, so employers and individuals can take action? Because one thing is just to make it into the city and then suddenly be surprised that the system is interrupted because of one of these weather incidents. I don't know if that is something that should be considered as part of the plan.
Well, I'll just jump in initially and throw it to others. I mean, that's why, Pat Warren and his emergency management team walked into my office, 2 o'clock on the day before, and let us know that the weather forecasts had taken a dramatic turn, and there were 2 separate systems that seemed to be merging and were likely to have this kind of significant consequence. And we actually put in effect exactly that type of plan. We did a press conference. We started pushing information out on all the MTA social media and communications channels. The customer, especially the customer channels, Shanifa Riera was very much part of this. So we had some success. It also happened to be a Friday, which was, a positive luck of the draw for the city, because that's a day that there's a little lighter commutation pattern. And the governor spoke out also very early, in the afternoon to alert people. Now, we're always looking for ways to make sure we can get it done better. One of the things that we pushed on that day in the communications was to get people to sign up for alerts. We now have an MTA customer alert function. If you're signed up, it'll tell you, is your train going to be disrupted for some reason? Whether it's a mechanical failure or weather or a police action or something that might disrupt your travel. In that case, the folks who had alerts got a lot of extra information on top of what we were doing publicly. So we're trying to do more of it and to do it more tailored to the individuals as well. But Mr. Warren.
I'll also add that we recognize the patterns of weather. So in the summertime, you start to get the coastal storms, which often turn to hurricanes and other things. In the winter, of course, you get snowstorms. And as a consequence, we do a lot of work ahead of time. The agencies do a ton of work ahead of time to make sure their equipment's clean, it's serviced, and then go out and when we do get the alert, they go out and double check switches and in pre-position equipment. So there's a lot of pre-work that goes on just because it's the season, and then what the chairman just described.
Mr. Zuckerman.
So I'm a big fan of the movie The Right Stuff. Tom Wolfe wrote that book and the screenplay, and there's a brilliant line in it which I promise is relevant, at least to what I think is relevant. No Bucks, no Buck Rogers. Now everyone here is probably getting a little too young around this table to know who Buck Rogers was. I look at my friend from Westchester; she probably doesn't know who that was, but. Right, doesn't know who that is. So no Bucks, no Buck Rogers. So you got to have money to fund the space program, and you can't have your fancy astronauts. I think there is it sounds boring, but I don't think it is, which is when you look at our P&L, on the operating side, you look at our capital budget, we have lots of line items. We have line items for leaf removal. We have line items that cover electricity and obviously labor. I think it's actually not a bad idea for us to start capturing, not as a special report, once a year. I mean on a perennial basis, monthly, quarterly, whatever it's not GAAP or whatever the standards are for governmental reporting. I think it'd be not a bad idea for us to start tracking how much we're spending. And I'm sure we do it, but I bet we do it in a way that is not in our faces as board members, obviously speaking as the finance chair. I think it's worthwhile talking about the cost to this agency and therefore to this city of what we're doing. Again, operating versus capital, but we are spending an enormous amount of money. We don't see it, we don't know it, but it's there. It shows up in things like overtime. It shows up in things like major projects you're doing intentionally to raise, for example, as you discussed, the elevation of a certain platform. So I think it's time we actually figure out between finance and C&D and the agencies. These guys love this topic. They can't stop talking. I love it. Anyway, I think it's really important for us to figure out how do we track that, because I'd like to be able to say, like we talk about in finance every month, what's going on with interest rates. I wouldn't mind also talking about what's going on with our climate spend, because I bet you it's going to rise, and we need to know what that is.
Super point. Ms. Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for this presentation. And actually, my question/comment follows to what my friend Neil was mentioning. Considering that there is a lot of money coming down the pipe from the state through the Environmental Bond Act or through the federal government, I'm wondering if the MTA is eligible for any of the resiliency funds or funds for climate change related activities. Can we, or are we securing these funds, considering that so much money will have to be invested into making these repairs, but also to be ready for the next storm?
Yeah, I mean, just to reassure you, we have a great federal affairs team that goes after every single dollar, especially that's in the IIJA, the Biden Infrastructure Initiative. But Jamie, do you want to comment on that further?
Only to say, board member, that we, as the chair saying, we're very aggressively seeking grant funding and other appropriated dollars where relevant. The sort of unfortunate reality of preparing for climate change in the future is that typically where that money flows is after a major federally or sometimes state declared disaster. So as in the case of Sandy, the MTA is in the process of completing $7.6 billion worth of projects, and actually we're informed recently that we'll be getting a little more funding from the federal government for Sandy recovery and resiliency projects. And Eric was noting that some of those projects, we've designed them to serve double duty. Coney Island Yard, good example, power cables elevated, new drainage installed that help us in the case of a heavy rainfall incident. So we're being opportunistic about where that money comes. And another point I would make to actually both board members is that if we're going to prepare for this existential threat, what the 20-year needs assessment emphasizes is that we need to minimize that capital cost on resiliency by incorporating it through design into everything that we do. So every time we renovate a station, we're already mobilized, going and adding a step to keep the water out, or working with our partners at the city, as Eric emphasized, DOT and DEP. When you're milling a street, take the street back down so that it can serve as a stormwater retention system. When you're upgrading pipe, make sure you're prioritizing doing that around a station that's being inundated because the pipes aren't large enough. So lots of measures to both minimize, incorporate cost, and then seek dollars where we can get them.
Yeah, I applaud, getting your hands on every penny, federal penny you can to build resilience into it. However, there's, I'm not saying you're doing it at the expense of the basics, but personally, I'm looking for long-term growth in cleaning out the drains and the simple things that seem to me simple. And I don't, put in the whiz-bang stuff as quick as you can, but there should be some sort of metric for how many drains we're cleaning out, and I know you do have those sort of things, and some of the drains are simpler than others, and some of them that I see that are constantly clogged. We do a much better job of it, in my opinion, in IMHO than the city does, and I feel that too. And one thing I did not see here too much was the winter resiliency stuff, and again, I got a sideways view of this, but let's treat the bus riders better when it comes to snow removal and those sort of things, so people will be on the buses instead of trying to get stuck in the rain in their cars. But how many times you see a bus shelter completely full of snow? Not our fault. It's DS's work. I don't know what you do to coordinate it. Twist somebody's arm up there and keep the drains clean and keep the bus paths clean.
It's a super point. And we have a great dialogue going with DEP in particular, but sanitation as well. We always got to strengthen it. One point that I don't want it to get lost, it was alluded to in Eric's presentation, is the capacity of the city sewer system is directly responsible for a significant portion of the flooding we are experiencing. So when you get past that 1 3/4 inches an hour, we become the secondary catchment area for all this water. And Jamie and the C&D team has initiated discussions with the city about, we understand that it's costly to enhance the capacity of the entire system, but there must be some discussion about targeted mechanical or other interventions to increase that capacity. We're regularly losing the West Side IRT, right? That's what we just went through. And that buildup at 81st and Broadway ain't because Zabar's is disposing of their cream cheese down the drain. So we need them to increase their capacity to push water out of the system. Thank you for appreciating that. No, but all kidding aside, that is the problem. It is the city has to push more water out, or else it's going to end up in the subway, and we won't be running service. And we're not saying do the whole system. We're saying at least let's look at sections where there can be specific interventions. And that's what Eric and Jamie have started. Andrew Albert.
This was a really invaluable presentation, and thanks again to everybody who worked after Ophelia, which was water like I've never seen in the subway before. There are times when there is water in the subway and there's no storm. It's third-party intrusion. Something has failed upstairs in a building or a retail. What are we doing about
underground water, my friend?
Yeah.
New York has got, the subway is intervening in all the underground streams that pre-existed us starting digging holes that became the subway system. Don't forget about that. We pump, on a dry day, we pump 13 million gallons of water just routinely out of the system. So we're already dealing with a lot of water.
Do we notify the buildings that are affecting our system and our stations that water is coming down and you have to do something about it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Others? Anybody? Okay. Hearing nothing else, I'm going to do a quick board presentation, and then we'll go to our usual board business. Thank you to everybody for the presentations. Thank you for the discussion. I'm incredibly impressed with the teams that are managing this preemptively during these emergencies, as I said, looking forward. Lot to take in. A couple weeks ago, I went to APTA, which is the trade association, the big conference of the entire transit industry. It was in Orlando. And I was asked to talk to transit leaders about New York, what we've done, and it was billed as New York's transit success story. Transit agencies nationwide are grappling with the post-COVID environment, how to recoup ridership, achieve financial stability, to deal with what's going on in terms of the homeless and mental health issues in the public space, and how to create a sense of safety. It's the same stuff we've been talking about in New York for a long time, especially the fiscal cliff. The difference is they are just starting to deal with this, and we tackled the issues early. And thanks to Governor Hochul, who got us a budget that dealt with the fiscal cliff, we have a 5-year lease on life for this amazing system. And actually, we're running more service. So, you know, I literally was going there. I was only there for a day, but I must have had 25 transit officials come up to me and say, like, how did you guys pull that off in New York, that your fiscal cliff is behind you, and where we're just starting to deal with it? It is really, you know, it's a testament to the political leadership that we do benefit from. But even with these gains, discussions at the conference highlighted that there are a lot of industry-wide challenges still in front of us, especially our ability to produce new rolling stock required to improve and maintain transit systems nationwide, especially zero-emissions buses. I always say that transit is the antidote to climate change. You know, we are the reason that New York City and the region is the most green. It's counterintuitive, but we are the greenest metropolitan area in the United States. But we also are committed to greening our own operations, as Jamie has led our process on. We are on track to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by our operations, by 85% by 2040, which is in keeping with the standard the state of New York has set. And we're aiming to complete this transition to zero-emissions buses. It's not that far in the future, folks. And we have a lot of other transit agencies nationwide have made similar commitments. So we need to deal with the fact that right now there is a serious shortage of electric bus manufacturers who can comply with the Buy America requirements of federal funding. And Dorval Carter, the guy who I was having that conversation with on the last slide, the head of the Chicago Transit Authority and the chair of APTA, put together a panel, a national panel, to deal with this in tandem with the White House and other governmental leaders. And Rich Davey is going to be the co-chair, because we are the biggest customer for this industry, this nascent industry. The problem is no better and maybe worse on the railcar side. Kawasaki's U.S.-based production is still recovering from the supply chain damage from the pandemic, and they have also had labor challenges, have so much of our manufacturing industries across the country. We are starting to see more R211s being delivered. Most recently last week, when we celebrated the first R211s going to Staten Island, the Sertoa system. And R211s have been in use on the A line since back in March. But things are slow going, broadly speaking, because there aren't a lot of railcar manufacturers that U.S. transit agencies can go to. In 2019, recall, Congress prohibited railcar purchases from Chinese manufacturers, even those who had set up operations in the United States. This impacted on competition. We're just being realistic. The Chinese had been major producers worldwide for the last couple decades, and we're dealing with the consequences of that. We need the U.S. Railcar market is only 8 to 10% of the worldwide railcar market. Sometimes everybody assumes that you can go down to the corner at Walgreens and buy a new subway car, right? That's the way the discussion. Why haven't you bought more new subway cars? Well, you should just go down to the corner. So we're a relatively small portion of the international market. We need to incentivize manufacturers worldwide and domestically, especially, to grow their capacity. As the 20-year needs assessment highlights, we have 8,700 cars we're going to need to replace over the next 2 decades. That's a couple thousand plus every 5-year plan, folks. So we are working to get more railcar manufacturers certified. That is actually going on, because they have to meet certain standards in order to operate in the United States. They have to satisfy Buy America requirements. They have to satisfy our fairly unique requirements for the cars that we use in New York. And to that end, in the next month, we are going to be issuing an RFP for a major strategic study, we want real brain power from some international experts to help us figure out how we're going to take on this challenge, because we are by far the biggest customer, and there is a competition problem that we have to address. I'm not going to talk too much about Hurricane Ophelia. You heard a ton about it, but I'm super proud of everything that our teams have done. And resiliency in this entire issue is one of the principal reasons that we have gotten the 20-year needs assessment rolling and put so much emphasis on the detail. Resiliency is top, one of the 2 or 3 top topics of the 20-year needs assessment, along with rebuilding our aging infrastructure, more conventional infrastructure like bridges and tunnels and line structures and signals and power and communications and all that stuff that we're going to drag all of our board members and other stakeholders out to see in the next year. Remember, we have the capital program. We got to get done by the end of '24 under the governor's leadership. But we need everybody to see the condition of these aging assets. The report was put together, again, by staff who have spent a couple of years accumulating data on the 6 million components and assets of the MTA. This has never been done before, to look at the system physically top to bottom, not just the condition. Sometimes we substitute age for actually an evaluation of condition. Oh, this is the oldest stuff, we're going to fix that. This is more, we have now more data so we can actually look at the condition of assets. For example, some of the newest parts of the Park Avenue Viaduct are in worse shape than the oldest stuff that was done by Cornelius Vanderbilt, right? So you need to know about the actual condition in order to make prioritization decisions. And you also need to understand the criticality to service of assets in order to make rational prioritization decisions. And this 20-year needs assessment allows us to do all that. And I was struck most of all by this new economic valuation of this amazing system. So the folks actually looked at it and used business metrics, and they said this thing is worth $1.5 trillion, and that's trillion with a T. Can you imagine what it would take to get a system like that built right now? Just think of even the Federal Environmental Review. I mean, if you thought congestion pricing of 4,000 pages was complicated. We have this priceless asset that has been bequeathed to us. And it's the only thing that makes New York, it is one of the only things that makes New York possible, and we really have to focus on it. The board is going to participate with us using this 20-year needs assessment to guide development of the 5-year capital plan that we have to adopt by the end of this next year. So I'm just putting everybody on notice. This is going to be a busy year. We're going to ask you to put shoulder to the wheel with us to shape the next capital program. Many of you read the report. We're going to be talking about it a lot. And I just want to close by opening the floor to discussion of initial responses. If you haven't finished reading the 20-year needs assessment, I forgive you. But I'm interested in what folks are taking away, at least, if anything, from their initial review. If there are any comments. Mr. Albert.
I've been through a lot of these 20-year needs assessments, and this one is just so much more well-researched, quantifiable. It just really shows what an incredible asset we have here and why we have to take care of it. And other cities can only dream about a system like ours. They cannot possibly afford it if you were to build it today. We have this, as Chairman mentioned, $1.5 trillion asset, and we must take care of it. And as Finance Chair Zuckerman mentioned, it has to be built into the budget. And what we spend on resiliency and repairs and future maintenance has to be a part of that. And we're all a part of that. And New York could not exist without this amazing system. So kudos to the people that worked on this 20-year needs assessment. It is an amazing document.
Lots more to follow in the months to come, so we look forward to working with everybody. Okay, if we may switch to our business, board business, committee reports, and regular board business. The minutes of the September board meeting and the minutes from each committee have been distributed to members. Comments or corrections or omissions? Mr. Albert?
Sure. On page 6, right above the words executive session, it says Chair Lieber thanked all public speakers and announced the board will convenes in executive session, should be convened. Thank you.
There you go. Okay. I don't want you to read the whole 20-year needs assessment. I can't put up with the typo corrections. Are there any further? Okay, if there are no further corrections, the minutes are approved as distributed with that one correction. Moving on to committee reports. Mr. Mack, Bridges and Tunnels.
We met on Monday, committee, and nothing to report. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Mr. Miranda, New York City Transit.
Thank you. The New York City Transit Committee met Monday and reports the following. There is one non-competitive item this month for $325.8 million for the purchase of 250 over-the-road express buses. The committee recommends this item, and I move it.
Second, Ms. Soren. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The item carries.
This concludes the New York City Transit Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Miranda. The Audit Committee, Ms. Barbas.
The Audit Committee met on Monday, and there is one item for board approval. The Audit Committee seeks approval of the MTA consolidated financial statements for the second quarter of 2023. The committee recommends this item, and I move it.
Second, Mr. Fleischer. All in favor? Opposition or abstention? The item is approved. Ms. Barbas, would you also deliver the Capital Committee report?
Sure. The Capital Program Committee met on Monday and reports the following. Construction and Development has 8 items this month, of which 7 are competitive items and 1 is a ratification of a modification for a total amount of $98.3 million. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Second, Mr. Jones. All in favor? Any opposition or abstentions? The items are approved.
This concludes the Capital Program Committee report.
Mr. Zuckerman, the Finance Committee.
Thank you, sir. We have 7 procurement items this month, 6 competitive and 1 non-competitive for a total of $91.2 million. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Second, Ms. Soren. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? The items carry.
Thank you. There are 4 real estate items this month. The items include 1 administrative item for Metro North and 3 transactional items for New York City Transit. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Second.
Mr. Rizzo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? The items carry.
This concludes the Finance Committee report.
This concludes today's agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Actually, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
Just to be on the record that the Joint Rail Committee met on Monday, and we have no items to report.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Second, Mr. Miranda. We are adjourned. Thanks. I so appreciate the gripes. Always, always. I thought it was a really important meeting. What we highlighted was the 20-year needs report and the resiliency aspect of it, which has been front and center from the beginning. As it happens, the top priority that report, which I know many of the folks in the press have read, highlights for as a resiliency investment that needs to be prioritized is the Hudson line. And lo and behold, that was the line that had that mudslide last week, which we were able to recover from so well. But that was, I thought, a real highlight in terms of the validation of what this report that we put together looking forward is getting at. The other thing that I just want to comment on is I'm very excited that Roberta Kaplan, who is a major civil rights litigator, has joined the MTA team resisting the New Jersey lawsuit, because it's, from my standpoint, that is a civil rights issue. That we're talking everybody seems to want to talk about is the 35,000 New Jerseyites who commute to the Central Business District by automobile and pay, a ton for parking. So that and versus the millions and millions of people who commute by mass transit who will benefit from congestion pricing. And a lot of them are people from New Jersey, right? 80% of people from New Jersey take mass transit, and most of them end up on the MTA system. So they will benefit from this congestion pricing system that is going to not just give us better traffic, cleaner air, and less traffic violence, but also better transit, more investment in transit for resiliency and so many other things. So with that, let's do the Minton thing.
All right, we're going to start today on Zoom because Samantha Liebman is joining us. Very first MTA News Conference in her new role as a reporter at New York One. Samantha.
Hi, welcome, Samantha. We saw that. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. So do we have a timeline for phase 2 of the 2nd Avenue subway now that there is this funding announcement? And is this all the funding, or is there more funding to come?
Well, number one, I just want to emphasize, we have not received formal notification from U.S. DOT of this grant award. I know that some of our congressional delegation had received notification, and we bless them for their leadership, both Senator Schumer and Congressman Espaillat, on this issue. But we have not received it, so I'm not prepared to engage in welcoming and celebrating and so on. But I'll say this: we've been fighting for this grant, Samantha, since I got to the MTA in 2017. And it will, if we get this project going, it will make good on one of the real historical wrongs in New York, which is we knocked down the 2nd and 3rd Avenue L's starting in the 1940s, and we told everybody in East Harlem, which is the most transit-dependent neighborhood in New York, that we were going to give them a mass transit rail system. And it takes until now to get it done. So this is a real positive milestone. But as I said, I'm waiting for formal notification that the grant has been awarded.
All right, let's move on.
There's no timeline. Oh, wait, Tim, but there's no timeline yet? We have no idea.
Well, we don't have no idea. The project has been designed to the normal 30% level, and we do have an idea of how long it will take. But let's wait until the finalization of this process when we're ready to move forward with the project, okay?
All right, thanks, Samantha. Let's go to Anna Lay right here from the New York Times. Anna.
Hey, Jano. Can you talk to us about congestion pricing delays and specifically the lawsuit from New Jersey, which you just mentioned? Does this threaten specific capital projects? You just went through the 20-year needs assessment, and I'm curious if we can get some specificity as to which projects in particular are under threat.
Listen, we're studying that. We have to make contingency plans because there are risks to this whole thing. As you know, we are planning to implement the system starting in the late spring, and the idea is that we would then have to run it for about a year to establish the revenue before we could issue bonds. So any delays have the potential for delaying projects, right? And we're far enough along in the capital program that we have to start making contingency plans, but we're not yet at the point where we haven't had those delays yet, and we are not at the point where we're in a position to identify specific projects. But if congestion pricing is delayed, there are potential consequences.
If you don't want to go into specific projects, can you talk at least about how it's going to affect the financing, like the
Sure.
bonding that you're trying
Sure,
to do?
but I mean, but the bottom line is, it is 15% of our capital program. And Anna, you've been looking at this for a while. It's got, that capital program includes all kinds of things. It includes ADA stations. It includes resignaling lines. It includes zero emissions buses. And it includes a ton of state of good repair. 80% of our capital program is state of good repair to make sure the system, which is aging, does not fall apart and we don't go back to 2017. So all of those things, we could have consequences if there is a significant delay to congestion pricing.
Presumably platform barriers to the pilot?
Everything that we're doing that is, again, I'm not telling you any specific thing, but everything will have to be looked at if we're short of $15 billion of our capital program, especially since that's the state money. That's the money that allows us to match federal grants. That's money that can be used for certain kinds of projects that can't be federally funded. So it's complicated.
All right. Yeah, Jano, you said $15 billion, and what's the percentage of the capital program?
It's 30% of the capital program. Did I say something wrong? Okay. Everybody can do the math. We have a $52 billion capital program, and $15 billion of it is coming from congestion pricing.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to Steve Nesson, WNYC Radio. Steve.
Hi, Jano. I have a good follow-up to Anna's question. Were you caught off guard when Adams lifted the cap on taxis last week, and how do you think that'll impact the congestion pricing program?
I think it will not impact the congestion pricing program because most of those EVs are, based on the information that I've been given, are replacing existing cars. That's what the information I've been given so far. But yes, I was caught off guard.
He opened licenses to any electric vehicle, so that's not replacing, that's adding new vehicles to the road.
Yeah. No, again, Steve, I'm not quarreling with you. I'm just saying the information I've been given so far is that most of the EV acquisition has been people who were previously driving FHVs that are replacing their internal combustion engine cars with EVs. But you're not wrong. To some extent, it remains to be seen. But we are accounting for it in our review of the congestion pricing program's compliance with the federal environmental assessment.
All right, let's move out east to Newsday's own Alfonso Castillo. Looks like he's standing by in the home studio there with the giant microphone. Alfonso, good afternoon.
Hello. Hi, Jano. I appreciated the presentation today about how all the agencies got through the storm. I know we're coming up on the 11th anniversary of Superstorm Sandy, and that the MTA invested a lot of money in the Long Island Railroad's kind of low-lying branches, Long Beach in particular. Can you talk a bit about how, if at all, some of those investments helped the railroad get through the storm as well as it did, as you noted, and also touch on the fact that given even all those investments, that there were impacts and there were suspensions on Far Rockaway and Long Beach? Does it speak to the reality that no amount of money can fully address the vulnerabilities of the system?
I think you just answered your own question, didn't you? That's kind of the Newsday way, right?
Right, I'll
okay,
hang
good. Listen, Alfonso, you just won the Glass Half Empty Award for this press conference. The Long Island Railroad ran what, Rob? 90% of service? Yeah, 90% on-time performance. 86% of on-time performance, 90% of service during that Hurricane Ophelia. But I'm going to defer to Rob on the question of how the post-Sandy investments may have contributed to that success. Rob?
Hi, Alfonso. As you know, the Sandy funding in particular focused on the Long Beach branch. From Sandy, we experienced a lot of damage to infrastructure, particularly signal cases and substations. All those pieces of infrastructure have been raised. So while we had some flooding in the Oceanside vicinity, it was minimal. It didn't impact any infrastructure. And once we were able to get the water out of there, we returned to service. So there was no real infrastructure damage. So those Sandy investments really paid off and helped us be able to return service quickly.
Well, I've got another question that's probably better for Rob to answer because it's sort of hyper-local. Suffolk County has a big bus redesign, takes effect on Sunday. They've been talking about this for years. I know one of the key goals of this redesign is to better coordinate with the Long Island Railroad. Can you talk about what, if any, conversations there have been with Suffolk County about better kind of syncing up LIR service and Suffolk County Transit service?
Alfonso, I know there's been some discussions on it. I'm not privy at this particular moment. I'm a week into the job, so it's something that we will get into, but I don't have.
We'll just do a follow-up with.
Yes, we'll look into
Okay.
it, and I'll get back to you, Alfonso.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving right along, we've got Timothy McNicholas is right dead center there from CBS 2.
Thank you, Tim. Hi, Jano. There's a report, as you know, from the MTA Security Department that showed there was an increase in the first 8 months of this year on assaults on transit workers, an increase of about 39% compared to the first 8 months of last year. Why is it that the number of employees assaulted continues to increase?
Well, that is a really important question. Here's what the MTA has done. We were the principal advocates and proponents of tightening the law that allows us to do transit bans for people who attack MTA workers last year. We had put together a all-union coalition, and right at the end of the legislative session, we're successful in doing it. Attacks on transit workers are totally unacceptable, and we are going to push back every way we can. We're going to push back by strengthening our collaboration with the NYPD, who is much more present in the system. We've also trained our transit workers on how to collaborate, as I say, to have more and better interactions with the NYPD so they can call people when they're working in the stations to see who might be a problem. And we're working with the NYPD on their response, the pace of they have driven crime down, but we are also working with them because they're also adding the responses to quality of life conditions to their mission in the subway system, and they're speeding their response times. So a lot of those things together, we believe, can push back on the assaults on transit workers. But one assault on a transit worker is totally unacceptable. These are public servants, and I actually call a lot of them after to just check in on them, and I know that up and down the chain of command, that happens as well. It is an outrage when transit workers are subjected to violence or they're just trying to do their jobs.
Do you have an idea of why the number is still increasing, even with all those efforts you just mentioned?
Yeah, truthfully, overall crime in the subway system is down. You know that. Overall crime is especially down compared to pre-COVID. The attacks on transit workers are one element of the crime problem in the system that is the numbers are not in the right direction, and we need to make sure that turns in the right direction, like the rest of subway crime.
And there's just one specific case I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
There's a bus driver we interviewed who was pepper sprayed on the job last
Yeah.
year. He told us that the radio was not working that day. Now, I just got an email about an hour ago from the MTA. I guess they feel that it was working. That's what they believe. Might not get a chance to ask you about this again. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. And is that a concern of yours, the functionality of the radios and the buses? And how often does that happen when radio is not working?
So listen, no secret. I worked on the rebuilding the World Trade Center for 14 years, and the history of radio communications in that disaster all bears on every New Yorker. The older radios that you're talking about, we are phasing them out and moving to a new bus radio system. Both of the two systems are still in effect right now as we make that transition. But the older radios have a 99% reliability. So they are actually they're old, but like many old things, they are actually working at a high level and performing well. But I don't know about that specific instance we'll have to, talk specifics with the people and down the line.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, let's move down the line to Michelle Kasky there of Bloomberg News. Michelle, good afternoon.
Hey, Jano, how are you? There's a number of groups now who have come out and said it's a CBC, and other groups have come out and said, look, would you please just amend the 20-year needs assessment and let us know, give us an idea of what some of these projects may cost, what some of the estimates are.
Yeah.
And why not do that? I mean, won't that be beneficial for the public to get a better understanding of what the scope of these projects are?
So I think you and I have talked about this, Michelle, so I'll go back over it. One is what's important about the 20-year needs report is it's the first time you've had such a thorough compendium of the physical system and what needs to be prioritized as we look forward. That is a huge milestone and accomplishment for the MTA. So, I mean, I understand that, some people want to move on, but you got to look at that document and say, what did it take to assess the condition and the criticality to service of 6 million assets and components? That had never been done, number one. Number two, the development of costing depends to a great extent on what kind of projects you imagine you're going to do the work on. You can't just say generically painting a bridge costs X or Y. For us, the way we're doing projects now, major state of good repair work takes place in tandem with expansion work. It takes place as part of, if you're working on a whole right-of-way corridor. So we need to spend additional time to figure out what projects are going to be paired and brought together before we just throw numbers at them. I emphasize to all of to everybody, my own team, but also to the public, that doing a project, a major construction project is not something you go down to Walgreens to find the price of. We need to figure out in a specific situation, we're going to do this structural work in tandem with that signaling project, in tandem with that ADA station project. What is it going to cost? Because a lot of it has to do with how many outages you're going to have, how long the crews are going to have to be on the job, how do you mobilize, what's the sequence of work? All of those things are what impacts on price. It's not just a generic throwing a number at it. That said, I love what I was hearing from our friends at CBC and reInvent Albany, the advocates today, which is the next phase is to talk about the specific costs for the 5-year capital program, and we will be doing that. It's just going to take a little while to put it together.
All right, let's move to Jose Martinez from the city, who is in a different part of the city, so he joins us on Zoom. Jose.
Mute. There we go. Hi, Jano. During your presentation today, you mentioned about how the change in 2019 from Congress when it comes to ordering from China, how that has affected the MTA. Can you say at this point how much of the MTA's rolling stock across New York City Transit or the railroads comes from China, and which manufacturers?
None. You're misunderstanding me. Okay.
Okay.
So China was one of the major manufacturers of rail cars worldwide. They were starting to get into the American market. They had contracts with Chicago. They had set up a manufacturing or assembly facility. We have, now that China has, the Chinese companies have been excluded, and I'm not objecting. I recognize and support the decision of Congress, but we're down at this point to 2 companies that produce rail cars that are Buy America compliant and that can build for the MTA based on certification and qualifications. And
those are what?
Kawasaki and Alstom. And Alstom is the former Bombardier operation in Plattsburgh. So we are trying to grow competition. It's the same as the bus environment. We need more competition in America, more companies that are producing Buy America compliant and MTA and U.S. compliant rail cars and buses. And that's why I said we need to do a major study that what is there industrial policy that we need from the federal government in order to encourage that? Are there additional actions that can be taken by the MTA? We want to make our rail cars decustomize our requirements so more manufacturers could easily use designs that they have pioneered elsewhere, but obviously they have to comply with U.S. and Federal Railroad and FTA safety requirements. So there has to be focus on it. I'm just laying down a marker, Jose, for the next capital program. We really have to be taking action to grow the competitive market for both rail cars and buses. Make sense?
And that it does. And thank you for clarifying that, Jano. I was under the impression that at some point there had been some involvement with China in rail cars, but perhaps not for this.
There was at one point early in the procurement for the 9As, which is still open. I think that there was may have been a bid submitted by that Chinese railcar manufacturer, but subsequently Congress took action.
And back here at the world headquarters of the MTA, we have Dave Colon from Streets Blog, who is early enough in the season. He's keeping hope alive with the Knicks. Dave.
It's conference finals this year, man. This new Knicks team out there. Jano, I also wanted to talk about the 20-year needs assessment because now that you guys put it out, we will just never stop asking you about it. But, this issue that Michelle was asking you about and the advocates pointed out, and I think you just mentioned today that this next step is getting specific costs for the 5-year capital program. But I think that something people are asking is they understand the idea of the new way that you do capital plans and that you price these things out. But how are people supposed to know then when the next capital plan comes out that what you're spending is both meeting the need and is appropriately meeting the need and is appropriately spending the money if they don't have anything to compare it against, where you say we value our rail cars that the upgrades are going to do at X and signal work, track work at Y?
I'm lost. I'm sorry. Somebody help. I don't.
If you say that you have to do $3 billion worth of state of good repair or upgrade work on signals in previous 20-year needs assessments, just to throw out a number there, you have that number and you can say, well, the MTA invested in it for this, in these different chunks. If you don't have a price tag on these things, you don't have a price on what the value is and what the value of the work would have to be, why are people supposed to go when we say, okay, we have a $50 billion capital plan, the money is being...
What I'm struggling with is we are intending to have broken down the costs in the different categories. So we are going to make it clear what different things cost.
But are people going to know, that you're hitting the amount of money that needs to be spent here or there? So when does that come out?
Well, so no, I think what you're going to see is we're going to come up with a plan that puts us on, what we expect to do is that puts us on the path to getting and maintaining the state of good repair. So the first step will be the 5-year plan, right? But you're not wrong. The public and folks who look closely at us can monitor whether we are credibly, what we're proposing will credibly take us on that path to what needs to be accomplished to have a state of good repair. Is that making sense?
I mean, kind of, I guess, what are we judging it against then when you come out with that number?
I think, Jamie, go ahead, please. I'm not succeeding. Right?
No. I think you've given us a pretty good description of how capital planning works, and that's what we'll be doing. We assess the needs of the system. Now we'll come up with a capital program. The capital program will be costed based on projects getting created, and we and the public, the board, the public, the legislature, others will be able to judge based on the projects we identify versus the needs, how we're doing on meeting our state of good repair needs. And those state of good repair needs will be and are significant, which is the thing that the 20-year needs assessment has identified here and that we hope everybody focuses on. We do need to keep making a significant investment in state of good repair in the system.
Right, and that's the other thing I wanted to ask about, Jana, because you mentioned it at the committee meetings yesterday that maybe we haven't invested enough in previous capital plans. Are we like forecasting a larger capital plan for that comes out next fall, larger than the $50 billion one?
I would say that like inflation would probably suggest that in order to maintain the pace even that we've been doing without prejudging whether that's going to be adequate to get us to maintain us on the path to state of good repair and to accomplish what we need to accomplish in terms of expansion, would suggest that we probably won't be in a position to propose to go down.
All right, we got to move on, Dave. We really have to move on, but we're going just right to your neighbor there, Nolan Hicks of America's New York Post. Nolan.
New York's New York Post. We still have a metro section. If I could follow up on Dave's line of questioning a little bit, I think there's been a lot of questions about why there is no price tag on the 20-year needs assessment, and there are parts of it that are quantified. So you guys talk about how you need to replace hundreds of substations for the electrical system for the subways. You broadly know what a substation costs in a range. So if you have 500 substations that need to be replaced, and if they cost $50 million a pop, why won't the MTA just come out and say this is sort of what we think it will, cost to replace all the substations in the system? I mean, that seems like a fairly knowable number.
Again, Nolan, I think you are like Walgreens' best customer in terms of how you price major components and major projects. I'm sorry, I don't look at it like X a pop. I do not look at it that way. To put in a substation depends on, what's going to cost to do a substation. Just doesn't depend on like going down to Best Buy and buying a bunch of electrical equipment and installing it in your home. You got to figure out, where is it going to be installed? What are the conditions of that? What kind of HVAC will we have to maintain for that particular system? What type of contractor will need to be mobilized to install that? Is it part of a bigger project where you have an electrical contractor who's capable of doing that work? Or is it's just not the way today's MTA prices things. And we're going to do it. I'm sure you will pick it apart. I guess my message is, why not spend the time to get educated about what the condition of this system is and what it's going to take to try to put us on a path to state of good repair. That's what that amazing document does. It's got an appendix in the back, which I'm certain that you have taken a look at, that gives enormous amount of detail. So you can get educated, and then when we put a price on some of that stuff, you can pick it apart.
Okay, so you have a follow-up to that?
Different subject. Why is the pilot on the platform screen doors running late, especially, why?
That project is among many projects we're trying to get over the finish line on the procurement process. But, it is not by any means the only thing. I just want to underscore that, the whole question of safety, not having people on the tracks, what we call track intrusions, we've made. Platform screen doors are by no means the only thing we've done. As you know, it is literally engineering impossible on about 80% of our stations. So in the meantime, we've taken a lot of different actions to try to drive down the number of people getting on the tracks, whether it's, most of them is putting themselves on the tracks, God forbid, and the worst of all is the situations. Pushings are down by more than 50% from 22 to now. And that's no consolation to the terrible episodes where that happens, but it is a significant number. We've also identified, we're in the process of testing out a whole mess of other technologies to try to make sure that we know and we have the ability to stop trains when there are, God forbid, people on the tracks. The front-facing cameras, the intrusion detection, all of that stuff is going through testing and is going to be piloted in the system. And we've also installed blue lights, which are, again, based on what the professionals tell us, have a deterrent effect on people who might want to do harm to themselves. We've done that on a pilot basis in a mess of stations. So together we have a 30% reduction in track intrusions, which is the relevant category, since the high point last winter. And we're going to keep fighting on this because, irrespective of the engineering challenges of platform screen doors, we want to just basically to keep people from getting harmed on the tracks. That's the key issue for us, and we're going to attack it from all ends.
All right, let's move on to Ben Brockfeld of AM New York. Ben, good afternoon.
Hey, Jano. I wanted to ask you about Omni. You said someone here said a few months ago that the subway stations would all have Omni machines this summer, or the rollout would be it would be this summer. It's October. I've just started seeing them at some stations. I saw one at Atlantic a couple weeks ago, but it's still the vast majority of subway stations, as far as I can tell, don't have them. So is there a timeline on when these Omni machines are going to be rolled out at all the subway stations?
Yeah, we did start the rollout of the machines, as you see, and are finishing the final stages of testing and commissioning so that we make sure that they work for the customers who want to use them. They'll be lit up and working very, very soon. And it is an initial pilot stage for testing the equipment, making sure it works in the system, and then we'll be rolling it all out very quickly to the rest of the stations over time.
Is there any
very soon?
Very soon. Okay. And also on Omni, it's been almost 5 years now, or 4 or 5 years since they've Omni readers have been on every bus and every subway turnstile. Forgive me if my timeline is a little wrong there, but the last I checked, the usage rates for Omni, it was 46% on the subway and 32% on the bus. That was a couple weeks ago. Last I checked, I think it's still similar. Are you concerned by these numbers? The fact that it's been several years and that people still seem to prefer using a Metro card or whatnot.
We're really pleased by the numbers. It is we'll get specifics. It is only a couple years that they've been installed. But and you're right that I think almost, or in some cases a little over, half of subway riders are using Tap and Go Omni. If you look at the percentage of riders who are eligible to use Omni because they're paying for regular fare, which is all that it's available for at the moment, it's a much higher percentage, and we're pleased with that. But we have a whole adoption strategy, and as we've said publicly, we've been re-engineering the schedule with the service provider so that we're in a position to get some of these other pieces in place. They should be in place very soon, which allows for fair use, reduced fare use, folks that are using pre-tax debit cards. All of that will be rolled out, and then at that point, so many more people that are using the subway system and the bus system can tap and go, and then we'll see a real adoption very quickly over time. So we're pretty optimistic that once that's in place, we'll get a much higher level of adoption.
And we close out the proceedings today with Evan Simko-Bednarski of the New York Daily News.
Hey, Jano. So this $3.4 billion that may or may not be coming from the FTA for Second Avenue Phase 2, my understanding is that would be contingent on $4.3 billion from the MTA. That, as I understand it, is part of the current capital plan. So is this money, the FTA money, is that threatened by any potential delays in congestion pricing? What's the thinking there?
It's so premature to say, but everything that we're paying for out of the current capital plan could be impacted by the congestion pricing delay if that happens.
If you have to start getting into contingencies, and I know you don't want to talk specifics,
yeah.
But is the reason that we're seeing, a NIMTIC public comment session on Second Avenue Subway, is Second Avenue Subway prioritized in a situation like that?
But we will have to get through all of those issues. Obviously, we have to make sure we're investing in state of good repair so that the system doesn't go backwards to summer of hell as well.
What's your level of confidence right now with being able to open up the congestion pricing program, on schedule?
I'm confident that what we've done, and I'm even more confident because we got Roberta Kaplan to represent the MTA in that lawsuit, who's, got an incredible record of success as a litigator, especially in the civil rights environment, which this is.
All right, thanks, Jano. Jamie, Rob, thanks, everybody, and good afternoon from Lower Manhattan.